any risk involving project decision making would have such steps. Okay. But when it comes to the applications to the energy sector, you may find that there are various modifications to that. And frankly speaking, I will not be having ready-made answers for much of the questions which I will be putting up. Because first, the first stage would be to have different questions, set of questions at hand at each of the different stages of decision making. Then only we can think of the solution. So it will not be a question answer round, rather it would be a question round. Now, before I get into that, any risk-related decision-making framework, what would be the key attributes you would be looking for? Because there is uncertainty, there is risk involved. What should be the characteristics, and then defining characteristics of that kind of a decision-making framework?
That should be sustained.
That would affect returns. But I am saying the characteristic of the process itself, the decision-making framework itself. The economics of the overall project, the cost-benefit analysis, all that will be taken care of within the framework. But the point is to think on these two counts, because what we are trying to assess and that's precisely these two factors which we want to build into our decision-making framework, which are not new to any business project. But the additional factor is that now you have why would the uncertainty arise?
Because of maybe vulnerability, maybe.
What do you understand by uncertainty? Let me put it this way.
Not sure about the.
Which is unknown, which cannot be known beforehand.
Yes, you are not sure of the expected outcomes. And then the risk would be the probability of that event happening and the magnitude. So at any stage, the adaptation measures make sense not just for the projects which are being planned, but also the ones which are there existing. So there is no distinction between adaptation for the future and adaptation for now. So you would look for a circularity in the decision-making process, so that you are not taking a final decision in a sequential way.
So regularity means closed loop.
Yes.
That will be all the time.
No, the game comes.
Yes, that's one thing. Even at a particular stage, because of the issue involved, it may be the case that before jumping from one stage to another, you want to have a certain level of analysis at a one particular stage. Now, just for those who will not be able to relate it, what we have said just discussed is that any decision making process which involves this factoring this into your planning stage, its key characteristic would be to have circularity. That it cannot be a linear way of decision making. You have a certain degree of circularity in it so that you can review your decisions in the light of the new information, because it's a phenomena for which you will be getting new information, or you may not be having an access to a certain database. You now have that information. Now review the decision. So at any stage, so there is no distinction as far as adaptation is concerned with the existing and the planned projects. That's one thing. Secondly, then the process would be iterative. And at any particular stage, at one particular stage, it can be different levels where a problem is being scrutinized, screened, and then we move on to the other stage. So the framework which I want to discuss will look into these, has been designed keeping these in the background. Now the first thing would be to identify the problem and objectives. Now, the issue at hand is climate change, but problem for your as an organizational decision making, it becomes a problem when either you are planning a new project or there is a new legislation or there is a change in the policy environment, change in government leading to a change in policy environment. For instance, now Obama is in our letter said that okay, we will be looking at climate change and the climate issue will be addressed. But it's more because of the after the Chinese storm. Earlier there was a complete, as in denial mode, but that sense is there now. We cannot judge it on its merit. But yes, inaugural address does have a issue of climate change being flagged by a president of country who has been known to be in a denial mode. Now, you may be having your operations, pipeline operations, maintenance. So the dedicated energy networks, for that, you will be taking into account new information. So it may be that the maintenance part of it, there also now, instead of going for the same coating material or the pipelines, you will look for new alternatives. So what I'm trying to say is that it's just not that it is for the future projects, and the impetus could come from any of these which are there can be a policy change, there can be government pushing for a certain kind of adaptation measure for the industry as a whole. So all those factors influence what is the problem at hand. Now, in the sense of terminology, there is a distinction between is the problem at hand, you may find that climate is just one of the factors. And you can decide upon the weightage, as in how much weight you want to put on to the climate related impact. But the non-climate factors should be there. Overriding importance can be given to the non-climate factors. But it will depend upon the nature of the problem. It is specifically in response to the climate factor. So you have high priority being assigned to the climate factors. That decision would be defined as the climate, would qualify as the climate adaptation. Now, sometimes it may be the best in your interest to go for a certain adaptation method, but it is likely to constrain the it is likely to have an impact on the others, not just the party which is taking the decision in order to safeguard its interest in the backdrop of the climate change. So you may be taking a best decision, but that may influence other one's decision-making framework, as in the scope of the decision in which they have to take a decision. Now, first, just going back to the pipeline, you may like to have some kind of new intermediate pumping stations with advanced technologies, but that may affect the access of the mining activities in that area. So the other agencies, that is the third party, may get influenced. So it can constrain as well. Now, and you also laid down the objectives. I think, are you looking at it from the point of the public policy, social welfare, where is your corporate social responsibility comes in, or your own economic motive? So now let us look at the different questions which we should be asking us if we are involved in such an exercise. Then, where does the need to make decision come from? What are the main drivers behind the decision? What benefits are intended? Is the problem explicitly one of managing present day climate change or adapting to the future climate change? As in, you are looking for a technological solution in your industry. As in, every organization wants to be the leader. And if you want to be leader, then if you can be a leader in the sense of taking climate change as your one of the priorities. And for example, there are many models in microeconomics which talk about that, okay, barometric price models, where you say that, okay, one firm, you chose that the leader amongst yourself.
Price leadership model.
Price leadership models. Now, how to factor into those costs into your pricing, because you happens to be the price leader firm. It is also from that point of view that at this stage, the identifying the problem becomes important, and the objectives, what are the objectives you want to achieve. Because that would in fact influence your scope of the problem you want to address. If climate change is not the main driver, is it expected to be a factor in the problem assess, because you will also be deciding upon these three, as in where I am heading to. Then what is the concerned level of decision making? Who is likely to benefit or suffer from the problem being assessed? What is the time constraint for decision making? Because this becomes one of the critical issues. That you have to deliver the goods in a time frame. Otherwise, it will make no sense for the, and that's the bone of contention between the university setup and the policymakers. They are also of the same view that this is one of the major bone of contention, that academicians can have their free space of deciding upon the time and when they will be coming out with the results. So that in the government and the academics, participation in the policy making is also one important aspect.